In the dense jungles of Cambodia, where ancient trees tower like cathedral spires and the air hangs thick with secrets, two young lives were about to vanish without a trace. This is the story of what really happened to Jake and Maya Hoffman, and the horrifying discovery that would shake the world 3 years later. It was March
It's
2016
so
when the
beautiful
Hoffman
out
siblings
here.
arrived in Siem Reap, their backpacks stuffed with camera equipment and their hearts
I
full
know,
of
I'm glad we
adventure.
did this.
Jake, 28, was a travel blogger with over 50,000 followers who hung on his every post. His sister Maya, 26, worked as a freelance photographer, capturing moments that magazines paid top dollar for. Together, they were an unstoppable team, documenting hidden corners of the world that most people would never see. But Cambodia wasn't just another destination for them. They had spent months researching forgotten temples and ancient tribal legends, planning what they called their ultimate adventure. Their goal was simple yet ambitious: to find and document ruins that hadn't been touched by tourism, places where history still whispered its secrets to those brave enough to listen. That's when they met Baran Chai, a local guide who claimed he could take them where no other tourists had ever been. From the very first meeting, there was something unsettling about Baran. He was a thin man in his 40s with eyes that seemed to calculate every word before he spoke. While other guides smiled and joked with tourists, Baran watched people like a predator studying prey. He spoke perfect English, which he said he learned from previous clients, but he never explained what happened to those clients or why they never left reviews. The warning signs were there from the beginning. Hotel staff whispered warnings about Baran when the siblings weren't listening. Other guides refused to work with him. Even the tuk-tuk drivers, who usually recommended anyone willing to pay them a commission, would shake their heads when his name came up. But Jake and Maya were young, confident, and hungry for the adventure that only someone like Baran claimed he could provide. "I know places the government doesn't even have on maps," Baran told them over dinner at a small restaurant near the Angkor complex. "Places where the jungle has kept secrets for hundreds of years. But these places, they're not for everyone. They're for people who understand that some things shouldn't be disturbed." The way he said it, with that cold smile playing at the corners of his mouth, should have sent them running. Instead, it excited them. If you believe people like Baran shouldn't be trusted with innocent lives, hit that subscribe button now. Only manipulators and predators would ignore the warning signs we're about to reveal. Baran charged them 3 times the normal rate, claiming the extra cost was for special permissions and protective measures. He insisted they sign a waiver that was written in Khmer, promising to translate it later but never doing so. He demanded they pay him in cash, up front, with no receipt. When Maya questioned these unusual requirements, Baran's friendly mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something dark underneath before he quickly covered it with that practiced smile. "Trust is everything in my business," he told them. "You trust me to take you safely, and I trust you to follow my rules exactly. No questions, no deviations from the path I choose. The jungle can be very dangerous for people who don't listen." The siblings' final social media post showed them setting off on March 15th with Baran leading them into the jungle near the Kulin Mountains. Jake's Instagram story captured their excitement as they followed narrow paths that seemed to disappear into green walls of vegetation. Maya's last Facebook post was a photo of Baran from behind, walking ahead of them with a machete in his hand and a large pack on his back that seemed far too heavy for what should have been a simple day trip. "Following our guide deeper than any tourist has gone before," she wrote. "If we don't post for a few days, don't worry, we're just off the grid finding magic. Can't wait to show you what we discover." But the magic they found wasn't the kind they were looking for. Their satellite phone, which they had rented specifically for emergencies, stopped transmitting signals at exactly 2:47 p.m. that same day. Their GPS tracker, hidden in Jake's camera bag without Baran's knowledge, went dark at the exact same moment. It was as if they had simply been erased from existence. When they failed to return to their hotel after 3 days, the staff contacted local authorities. The search began immediately, with rescue teams combing through the areas where tourists typically visited. But Baran had taken them far from those safe, mapped locations. He had led them into a part of the jungle where even experienced trackers rarely ventured, where the canopy was so thick that helicopter searches couldn't penetrate, and where every trail looked exactly like every other trail. The official search lasted 2 weeks. Volunteers, including other tourists and expat residents, joined the effort. Social media campaigns spread their photos worldwide. Their parents flew in from Colorado, spending their life savings on private search teams and reward money. But the jungle kept its secrets, and the only trace they found was Jake's torn backpack hanging from a thorn bush 3 miles from where their signals had disappeared. Baran, meanwhile, seemed genuinely helpful during the search. He joined the rescue teams, claiming he wanted to retrace their steps to find clues. He spoke to reporters about how devastated he felt, how this had never happened to any of his clients before. But there was something about his performance that felt rehearsed, like he had prepared for this exact situation. When questioned about the unusual route he had taken them on, he claimed they had insisted on going that way despite his warnings about the dangers. 3 years have passed since that day, and you're about to discover what really happened to Jake and Maya Hoffman in that jungle. The truth is more terrifying than anyone imagined, and it all comes down to the evil that lurked behind Baran's friendly facade from the very beginning. The case officially went cold in September 2016, but Dr. Sarah Chen couldn't let it go. As a forensic anthropologist who specialized in missing persons cases, she had seen families destroyed by unanswered questions, and the Hoffman case haunted her like no other. The parents had aged 10 years in the span of 6 months, their hopes slowly dying as each lead turned into another dead end. But Sarah believed that every disappearance left traces, and somewhere in that jungle were the answers everyone needed. In 2019, Sarah assembled a team for what she called a scientific expedition, though everyone knew it was really about finding Jake and Maya. Her team included Marcus Rivera, a survival expert and former military tracker who had worked missing persons cases across Southeast Asia. There was also Lisa Park, a documentary filmmaker who wanted to capture their search for a film about unsolved disappearances. The final member was David Kim, a technology specialist who brought ground-penetrating radar and other equipment that hadn't been available during the original search. The team needed a local guide, and despite everything that had happened, Baran was still operating in the area. Other guides refused to go into the remote regions where the siblings had disappeared, claiming the jungle was cursed or dangerous. But Baran, with that same cold confidence he had shown 3 years earlier, volunteered immediately. He even offered a discount, saying he felt responsible for what had happened and wanted to help find closure. "I know those paths better than anyone," Baran told Sarah during their first meeting. "I've been thinking about that day for 3 years, going over every detail. I believe I know where we should look." But Marcus noticed something that Sarah missed. When Baran talked about the missing siblings, he spoke about them in past tense, as if he already knew they were dead. The expedition began on October 8, 2019, exactly 3 years and 7 months after Jake and Maya had vanished. From the first day, strange things started happening. Equipment would malfunction for no reason. Food supplies they had carefully packed would go missing overnight. David's expensive radar equipment was found smashed one morning, with Baran claiming he had heard animals in their camp during the night. But the most disturbing thing was Baran himself. Away from civilization, his mask began to slip more frequently. He would mutter to himself in Khmer when he thought no one was listening. He carried a hunting knife that seemed far too large for cutting vegetation. And he had an unsettling habit of disappearing for hours at a time, always returning with vague explanations about scouting ahead or checking for dangerous animals. Lisa's camera captured many of these moments, though at the time, the team didn't realize how significant they would become. On the third night, her camera picked up audio of Baran talking to himself near the edge of their camp. When they later enhanced the recording, they could hear him saying things like, "They shouldn't have gone so deep," and "Some secrets should stay buried." Comment: Baran is a monster. If you believe guides who harm tourists should face the harshest punishment possible. People who defend predators like him are just as guilty. On the 5th day, Marcus found something that changed everything. Hidden under a fallen log, partially buried by 3 years of jungle growth, was Maya's camera. The memory card was still intact, protected by the waterproof case. When they reviewed the footage that night, they saw the final hours of the siblings' lives from their own perspective. The video showed Jake and Maya following Baran deeper into the jungle than any tourist should ever go. But more importantly, they showed Baran's behavior changing as they got further from civilization. His friendly chatter gradually stopped. He began checking his phone frequently as if waiting for some kind of signal. And in one crucial moment captured by Maya's camera, they saw him adding something to the siblings' water bottles when he thought they weren't looking. Whatever he put in their water, it worked fast, Marcus explained to the others as they watched the final video. Look at how Jake starts stumbling after drinking. Maya tries to help him, but she's getting weak too. And look at Baran, he's not surprised. He's been planning this. The last clear footage showed Baran leading the drugged siblings toward what looked like a massive tree in the distance. The camera shook as Maya tried to keep filming, but her movements became increasingly unsteady. The final frames showed the ground rushing up as she collapsed, the camera tumbling from her hands. But David's technical analysis revealed something even more disturbing. The timestamp on Maya's camera showed they had been drugged and kidnapped at 2:47 p.m., the exact moment their satellite phone and GPS tracker had stopped working. Baran hadn't just planned their disappearance. He had somehow blocked their emergency signals at precisely the right time. Armed with this evidence, the team confronted Baran that evening. But instead of denying what they had seen, he laughed. It was a sound that would haunt them for the rest of their lives, cold, calculated, and completely without remorse. You want to know what happened to your precious missing tourists? Baran asked, his friendly guide persona finally dropping completely. Fine. I'll show you. But understand this, once you see what I've done, you become part of the secret. And secrets in the jungle have a way of staying buried forever. That night, as storm clouds gathered overhead, Baran led them to a place that would change their understanding of evil forever. Deep in the jungle, where the canopy blocked out even the moonlight, stood a tree house that shouldn't have existed. Built into a massive banyan tree, it looked ancient but well-maintained, as if someone had been caring for it regularly. Welcome to their final home, Baran said with that terrible smile. They've been waiting for visitors. The tree house loomed above them like something from a nightmare, its wooden platforms disappearing into the darkness of the canopy. Ancient banyan roots had grown around and through the structure, making it impossible to tell where the tree ended and the building began. Rope ladders hung down from multiple levels, swaying slightly in the humid night air. But what made Sarah's blood run cold was the smell, a sweet, rotting odor that could only mean one thing. Go ahead, Baran whispered, gesturing toward the ladder with his knife. Your friends are waiting upstairs. They've been very patient. His eyes gleamed with a madness that had been hiding behind his guide persona for years. I built this place especially for visitors like them. Visitors who ask too many questions and go too far from the safe paths. Marcus stepped protectively in front of the others, but Baran was faster than he looked. The knife appeared at Lisa's throat before anyone could react. Everyone climbs, Baran commanded. Now. Or the filmmaker joins her subjects in a very different kind of documentary. One by one, they climbed the rope ladder with Baran following behind, his knife ready for anyone who tried to escape. The tree house was larger than it had appeared from below, with multiple rooms connected by narrow wooden walkways. Kerosene lanterns hung from the ceiling, casting dancing shadows on walls that were covered with photographs. As their eyes adjusted to the light, the team realized with growing horror that the photos showed dozens of different people, all tourists, all young, all smiling in what were clearly their final moments. My collection, Baran said proudly, gesturing at the wall of photos. 23 couples and solo travelers over the past 8 years. Jake and Maya were numbers 24 and 25. You four will make it 29, which is a nice round number to end on before I relocate my operation. But it was the next room that contained the discovery that would haunt their nightmares forever. 2 sleeping bags lay side by side on a wooden platform, zipped shut and covered with a thin layer of dust. The sweet smell of decay was overwhelming here, mixed with the musty odor of the jungle. Even though 3 years had passed, everyone knew what they would find inside those bags. Go ahead, Baran urged, pressing the knife harder against Lisa's neck. Open them. You came all this way to find your missing tourists. Well, here they are, exactly where I left them. With shaking hands, Sarah unzipped the first sleeping bag. Inside were human remains that had been perfectly preserved by some chemical treatment Baran had applied. The skeleton wore Jake's distinctive silver watch and the Colorado University t-shirt he had been wearing in his final social media post. But what made the discovery truly horrifying was the position of the bones. The arms were crossed over the chest in a peaceful pose, as if Jake had been arranged that way intentionally. The second sleeping bag contained Maya's remains, also perfectly preserved and positioned with the same disturbing care. She still wore her camera strap around her neck and the turquoise bracelet that had been a gift from her parents. But like her brother, her remains showed signs of having been arranged post-mortem, positioned as if she were simply sleeping peacefully instead of murdered. "I always pose them nicely," Baran explained with the pride of an artist discussing his work. "Death should be dignified, don't you think?" After the drugs wore off and they realized what was happening, they begged and screamed for hours. But in the end, I made sure they looked peaceful. It's the least I could do after taking everything from them. David couldn't contain his horror any longer. "You're insane," he whispered. "These were innocent people. They trusted you to keep them safe." But Baran only laughed at his outrage. "Innocent?" Baran's voice turned ice cold. "They came here to exploit my country, to turn our sacred places into content for their social media followers. They wanted to find hidden temples so they could expose them to the world, bring in crowds of tourists who would destroy everything our ancestors built. They got exactly what explorers deserve when they go too far. Like this comment with justice for Jake and Maya. If you believe monsters like Baran deserve life in prison. Anyone who thinks tourists deserve to die for exploring is just as sick as he is." But Marcus had been studying the room while Baran spoke, and he noticed something crucial. Multiple sets of ropes hung from the ceiling beams, all cut at different lengths. Chains were bolted to the walls at intervals that suggested they had been used to restrain people. This wasn't just a place where Baran brought his victims to kill them, it was where he kept them alive and tortured them first. "How long did you keep them here?" Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. Baran's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp in the lamplight. "Jake lasted 4 days before his heart gave out," he said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Maya was stronger, she survived almost a week. She kept begging me to let her brother's body go, promising she would do anything if I just let her bury him properly. It was quite touching, really. Family loyalty even in the face of death." The team was beginning to understand that they weren't just dealing with a killer, they were facing a predator who had turned murder into an art form. Baran had spent years perfecting his methods, learning exactly how to isolate victims and keep them alive long enough to satisfy his twisted needs. The treehouse wasn't just a hiding place, it was a torture chamber designed to keep victims alive and aware for as long as possible. Lisa's camera was still rolling, capturing everything despite the knife at her throat. She realized that if any of them survived this encounter, the footage would be crucial evidence to finally expose Baran's crimes. But survival seemed increasingly unlikely as Baran moved toward the ropes and chains, clearly preparing to add 4 more victims to his collection. "The beauty of this location," Baran continued, running his hand along the wall of victim photos, "is that no one ever finds it. No search teams, no helicopters, no rescue parties. The jungle keeps my secrets and my guests stay with me forever. Jake and Maya have been such good company these past 3 years, but I think they're ready for some new friends." The storm that had been building all evening finally broke, sending sheets of rain crashing through the canopy above them. The sound of thunder masked any noise they might make, but it also meant that screams wouldn't travel far through the jungle. Baran seemed to enjoy the dramatic timing, tilting his head to listen to the storm as if it were music composed specifically for what he was about to do. "The rain always makes things more interesting," he said, moving toward a wooden chest in the corner of the room. "Jake screamed so loudly during his first storm here that I thought his voice would give out. But Maya, she was smart. She saved her energy, tried to bargain with me instead of wasting time on screams nobody would ever hear." As Baran opened the chest, revealing an assortment of knives, rope, and tools that clearly weren't meant for jungle survival, Marcus caught Sarah's eye and nodded slightly toward the window. The treehouse was built high above the ground, but the banyan tree's thick branches offered multiple escape routes for anyone brave enough to try. The question was whether they could create enough distraction to get everyone out alive. Lisa, still with the knife at her throat, whispered something that made Baran lean closer to hear her over the storm. That moment of distraction was all Marcus needed. He lunged forward, tackling Baran away from Lisa and sending them both crashing into the wall of victim photographs. The pictures scattered across the floor, showing decades of smiling faces who had met their end in this very room. "Run!" Marcus shouted as he wrestled with Baran for control of the knife. But Baran was stronger than he looked and fought with the desperate fury of someone who had too much to lose. The blade slashed across Marcus's arm, sending blood spattering across Maya's sleeping bag, but he held on, knowing that letting go meant death for all of them. Sarah grabbed Lisa and David, pushing them toward the window as the two men fought. The rain made the tree branches slippery and dangerous, but staying in the treehouse meant certain death. One by one, they climbed out onto the massive banyan branches, using the natural handholds that the tree provided. Behind them, they could hear Marcus and Baran crashing through the wooden furniture, their struggle growing more violent by the second. "We can't leave him," Lisa protested, but another scream from inside the treehouse made the decision for them. It wasn't Marcus's voice. David pulled out his phone, hoping against hope that they might have a signal this deep in the jungle, but the screen showed no bars. They were completely cut off from help, just like Jake and Maya had been 3 years earlier. As they climbed down through the banyan's maze of branches, Sarah noticed something that chilled her even more than what they had already seen. Carved into the tree's bark were dozens of names and dates, scratched deep into the wood by desperate fingers. She recognized some of them from missing persons reports she had studied over the years. Jake and Maya's names were there too, along with a date from 3 days after they had disappeared, the day they had finally died in Baran's torture chamber. The rain made their descent treacherous, and David nearly fell twice before they reached a branch thick enough to rest on. From their position, they could see lights moving inside the treehouse and hear the sounds of the fight continuing. But they could also see something else that made Sarah's blood run cold. Other structures built into nearby trees, connected by rope bridges that disappeared into the darkness. "This isn't just one tree house," she whispered to the others. "It's an entire complex. He's been building this place for years, expanding it with each group of victims." The realization hit them all at once. Baran hadn't just been killing tourists for 3 years since Jake and Maya. He had been operating this nightmare factory for much longer, perfecting his methods and expanding his hunting ground. Hit subscribe if you believe predators like Baran should be stopped before they claim more innocent lives. Only people who support killers would ignore this warning. A sudden crash from above sent pieces of wood and debris raining down on them. Marcus came tumbling through the canopy, barely catching himself on a branch 10 feet below the treehouse. His shirt was soaked with blood, but he was alive and moving. Behind him, Baran appeared in the window, silhouetted against the lamplight like a demon emerging from hell. "You can't hide from me in my own jungle," Baran screamed over the storm. "I know every tree, every path, every hiding place. You'll die out there just like all the others, but it won't be quick like I planned. Now you'll die slowly, alone, afraid, just like your precious Jake and Maya." But Marcus had managed to grab something from the treehouse during the fight, Baran's satellite phone, the device he had been using to jam the signals of his victims' emergency equipment. As they climbed down toward the jungle floor, Marcus worked frantically to activate the device's emergency beacon. If they could get a signal out, rescue teams might finally be able to locate this horror factory that had been hidden in the jungle for so many years. The ground was soft and muddy from the storm, muffling their footsteps as they tried to put distance between themselves and the treehouse complex. But they could hear Baran above them, moving through the canopy with the skill of someone who had spent years navigating these branches. He knew the jungle better than they did, and he was hunting them with the confidence of a predator on familiar ground. Sarah looked back one last time at the treehouse where Jake and Maya had spent their final days. Tomorrow, if they survived, the world would finally know the truth about what had happened to the missing siblings. But tonight, they had to focus on making sure they didn't become the next victims in Baran's collection of tourist trophies. The The storm was getting worse, and somewhere above them, a monster was preparing to hunt. The satellite phone's emergency beacon finally connected just as Baran dropped from the canopy behind them, his knife glinting in the brief flashes of lightning. The team ran through the muddy jungle floor, crashing through undergrowth and splashing across hidden streams while Baran pursued them with the relentless determination of someone who had too many secrets to protect. But help was finally coming. Within 2 hours, the storm had passed and helicopter searchlights were cutting through the jungle canopy. The Cambodian military, working with international rescue teams, had triangulated the emergency signal and deployed a full search and rescue operation. For the first time in 8 years, someone had escaped from Baran's hunting ground alive and able to lead authorities back to his nightmare factory. Baran made one final desperate attempt to silence his only witnesses. As the helicopters circled overhead, he cornered the team near a steep ravine, waving his knife and screaming that they would never leave the jungle alive. But Marcus still had fight left in him despite his injuries. When Baran lunged forward for a killing blow, Marcus sidestepped and watched as the killer's own momentum sent him tumbling over the edge into the rocky gorge below. The search teams found Baran's body 2 days later, broken on the rocks 40 feet below the ravine. Even in death, his face held that same cold smile that had fooled so many tourists into trusting him with their lives. But his reign of terror was finally over, and the jungle that had hidden his crimes for so long would now reveal all his secrets to the world. The investigation that followed was the largest criminal case in Cambodia's modern history. International teams of forensic experts descended on the treehouse complex, documenting evidence that would take months to fully catalog. They found personal belongings from dozens of victims, detailed journals where Baran had recorded his methods, and most horrifying of all, video recordings he had made of his victims' final moments. The treehouse complex was even larger than the team had initially realized. Connected by rope bridges and hidden platforms, it spread across nearly half a mile of jungle canopy. Each section had been designed for a different purpose, some for imprisonment, others for torture, and several for the disposal of remains. Forensic teams eventually recovered evidence linking Baran to 37 murders spanning 8 years, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in Southeast Asian history. Jake and Maya's remains were finally brought home to Colorado, where their parents were able to give them the proper burial they had been denied for 3 years. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people, including many who had followed their travel blog and felt like they had lost friends they had never met. Their story became a rallying cry for better safety protections for tourists in remote areas around the world. The documentary that Lisa had been filming became a crucial piece of evidence in the case, but it also served another purpose. When it was released to the public, it showed the world exactly how a predator like Baran operated. The film revealed how he had gradually isolated his victims, how he had recognized their vulnerabilities, and how he had used their trust against them. Most importantly, it showed other tourists what warning signs to watch for when hiring guides in remote areas. Sarah's investigation earned her international recognition, but she took no pride in the fame that came from exposing such horrors. She established a foundation in Jake and Maya's names that worked to improve safety protocols for adventure tourists and provided resources for families of missing persons. The Foundation's first major initiative was creating a database of verified guides and tour operators, helping travelers avoid predators like Baran who preyed on their sense of adventure. The Cambodian government, embarrassed by the international attention the case had attracted, implemented strict new licensing requirements for tour guides and established regular inspections of remote tourist areas. They also created a tourist safety hotline and required all guides to carry GPS tracking devices that could be monitored by authorities. These changes came too late for Jake and Maya, but they would protect countless other travelers in the years to come. Marcus eventually recovered from his injuries and returned to his work helping families find missing loved ones. He carried scars from his fight with Baran, but he also carried the satisfaction of knowing that his courage had finally brought justice for Jake and Maya and all of Baran's other victims. He often said that surviving that night in the jungle had taught him that evil could only thrive in darkness, and that shining light on the truth was the most powerful weapon against predators who thought they were untouchable. The treehouse complex was eventually burned down by authorities, but not before every piece of evidence had been carefully documented and preserved. The massive banyan tree still stands today, but now it serves as a memorial to Baran's victims rather than a monument to his crimes. A simple plaque at its base lists the names of all 37 people who died there, ensuring they will never be forgotten. If you believe monsters like Baran deserve to be exposed and remembered as the evil predators they were, hit that subscribe button right now. Only people who support killers and manipulators would want this story to stay hidden. Today, Jake and Maya's travel blog still exists online, frozen in time at their final post about finding magic in hidden places. But their real legacy isn't in the photos and videos they shared with the world. It's in the lives that were saved because their story finally exposed the monster who had been hunting in the shadows for far too long. Their disappearance in the Cambodian jungle became the key to stopping a killer who had thought he was untouchable, proving that even in death, truth and justice can still triumph over evil. The Hoffman siblings finally found their way home, and the world became a little bit safer because their story refused to stay buried in the darkness where Baran had left it.